My name is Jim Selman. I'm having a conversation with Barnet Bain, who's become a real friend over the last 3 or 4 years and is perhaps one of the more creative people that I know. In fact, he's just finished what I hope and I believe will be a landmark book on the subject of creativity. He's just finished the book of Doing and Being, and it's really a landmark work on the subject of creativity. And it's one that I would recommend highly, and one that I'm very, very much enthusiastic about in terms of its impact on my own thinking. But more importantly, Barnet has been a creator himself for the last years and has made some really memorable movies that are not only well produced and well directed, but that are actually designed to make an impact and make a difference in people's lives. And today, Barnet, I was going to suggest that we might want to talk a little bit about something we all have a concern about called the future.
Oh, yeah.
And specifically the idea that the future is increasingly uncertain. I've been doing a lot of thinking and working on the subject of accelerating change, and how do you deal with the increasing levels of uncertainty that are occurring in both our personal lives, but also perhaps our social and even perhaps at the level of the globe.
Well, that is, for me, the number one subject. We have been calibrating our relationship to the future out of the past. And that's worked. I think that's worked to some degree. Most of us have created at least a somewhat functional relationship with life itself. But it increasingly is breaking down because the calibrations, the modulators by which we interface with reality, largely based out of, almost entirely I should say, based out of past experience, those are no longer hold up. So there are entirely new modulators and calibrators that we want to bring to bear in order to have a new, entirely new kind of relationship with the future. So in my own thinking, I believe this is the function of creativity.
Well, one of the things I've always been saying is that if things don't change, then you enjoy the luxury of being able to learn from the past. You can learn from your ancestors, and you can apply those learnings to your decision making, and that can affect the future. But today, with this accelerating change, as you say, not only do we need new calibrators, but that most of our budgeting systems, most of our planning systems, maybe all of them are tied to that. Plus, our whole field of psychology is built in the belief that my current way of being in the world is a function of my past.
There are certain excavations, there are certain archaeologies, psychic archaeologies that are undertaken, I think, in psychological investigations that psychology is not enough to get us there. Psychology, I think, is this, it allows us to investigate the clutter that stands in the way from between where we are now and where it is we want to get. It is an investigation really of our history, of how we're socially and culturally conditioned by the family, conditioned by our surroundings, our values, our entertainments, our religions, our local society. Once we have an intimacy with the social conditioning, with the psychology, then there's the vast expanse of spiritual awareness that is not about the past. Psychology is about the past.
That's right. And in fact, in a way, the issue here is one of causality.
Yes.
That in a past determined view of the world.
Which is the present is the result of the past.
That's right.
Which is a limited paradigm, and we've exhausted it.
Well, and in that paradigm, you're also taking your experience in the past and
throwing it into the future.
Projecting it into the future.
Yeah.
Calling that the future, but making your decisions on that means you're really living into more of the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is how we get trapped in these.
So we move the furniture around, and so we can fool ourselves for a lifetime or lifetimes. We can blind ourselves to what is really going on. It's like moving around the inside of a torus, round and round, and this way and this way, and it looks like you're actually going somewhere.
Exactly.
So,
but in this theme, the theme of these talks really has to do with possible futures. So if the traditional view of the future is an extension of the past, then I'm proposing that we really need to invent a different mindset, a different way of thinking, in which we can disconnect the future as a possibility from an extension of the past, and where your work on creativity has been so exciting, is to really see that human beings can begin to see the future as a choice.
It is a choice.
And if we look
It's
at the
clearly a choice.
if we look at the future as a choice, then the question is really not what's possible, but what future are we committed to creating?
You know, I'll see if I can conjure up a metaphor for this. We were talking about surfing before we began, before we rolled cameras. The waves break and they roll to the beach. Now, how you show up on that wave, the quality and level of your performance on that wave, that is a matter of that is a skill set that has to do with the doing nature of things.
Mm-hmm.
The being nature, the mood state,
Mm-hmm.
lies in forces beyond you.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can create relationship with those, and it's my view that what is emerging is a brand new skill set, a conscious skill set that involves making a conscious relationship with mood.
I believe that's exactly right, and I think I love the surfing metaphor. In fact, I've been using one similar to that
What's
myself.
yours?
Well, I've been using navigating,
Yeah.
but surfing I think is even better, because if we think about the future as something that's emerging,
Yeah.
in the same sense that a wave emerges, then we have to surf.
And it's literally so.
It's literally
It's
so.
actually
And
literally a wavefront.
we need to be able to surf that emerging reality
Yeah.
in order to be able to have possibilities and deal with our human concerns. But also I'm beginning to appreciate something that's I've been working on for the last few months, that's the flip side of that, which is to appreciate that the waves are also disappearing
Yes.
as fast as they're emerging,
Yes.
so that we're not only dealing with an emerging reality
Yes.
and emerging possible futures, but we're also dealing with worlds that are disappearing.
Absolutely.
And I was reading a book called Radical Hope
Yeah.
by Jonathan Lear, who talks about the metaphor of the, not a metaphor, it's an analogy of the Native Americans, whose entire civilization revolved around the buffalo. And their spiritual world, their physical world, their economic world, everything was centered around the buffalo. And when the buffaloes disappeared, their whole world disappeared. It wasn't just change. And I'm starting to
It's a paradigm shift. It's a dimensional shift, really.
Exactly. And I'm beginning to appreciate my own world. If I think about my education, the values, the relationships that I grew to understand, the meaning that I built in my life, all of that is under reformulation as this world I've grown up in is disappearing. Equally important, I think, though, is also how we share these ideas and share these observations, so that it's not just you and me individually maybe having some skill at surfing, but that we are able to create a civilization capable of surfing.
Some of that, I think, has to do with modeling. Time, how you reflect your behaviors, your character, your choices, your attitudes, your decisions, your belief structures, your resilience for others. Now I think there's another layer. I'm discovering another layer. I'm looking into another layer. And that layer really has to do with the being states. It is one thing to model certain behaviors. It's another thing to begin to create an intimacy with being states, with moods, with states of possibility, wherein the possibility of possibility is itself a state.
Yes.
So these are synergies of energies, and I hope I'm not getting too esoteric here, but these are energetic experiences.
Well, I think of these as spaces,
Yes.
in a way, and it's as simple as if we've been talking about sort of social level concerns about uncertainty and change and so forth, but if we bring it back down to our personal lives, okay, which you and I were beginning to talk about earlier, and at my age of 73, and your age of 62, at least I'm beginning to discover that I want the future to not be predictable. But at the same time,
the future is both not the result of the past.
That's right.
And can be, to the extent that we continue to import the past. But I have a sense of what you're speaking to. There is the growing awareness that I have that every interruption to an aspiration, to an expectation, to a hope, to an intention, every interruption, all the yeah buts, all the why nots, all the if onlys, all the well I don't think, all the qualifications, and they arise, they come rapid fire, one after the other. Every one of those is imported from the past.
That's right.
Every one of them has nothing to do with the present. So to the degree, certainly that I, in my own process, become more aware of that and more deeply and fully embody the ownership of that, not as a concept.
That's right.
Not as an abstraction, not with my prefrontal cortex. That's a limbic function. That's a visceral function.
But literally.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yes, quite literally, it is a limbic visceral function that we will not outthink life.
But now, if take that as a grounding and an awareness and something we can own. But then now let's look about the future. Because if you and I were going to create a project together,
yes,
or do something, almost automatically, without even thinking, we bring our interests, our likes, our history, the things we're good at, the things we're not good at,
and we bring our mood states, and together they create a
we put that in the stew, and we think of something we're going to do. But,
yes.
But I'm suggesting if we're really going to invent the future, we need to have some new skills and new practices for being able to more or less keep the canvas blank, so that the culture and the history and the past doesn't overtake us and end up in one way or another perpetuating more of the circumstantial drift.
I think the future and the skill sets reveal themselves to us. What is being revealed to me now is a requirement. It is a requirement. It's not an option. It is a requirement to abandon the notion of absolutes and guarantees. The absolutes, guarantees, insurances, playing it safe, plan Bs, all of this kind of, all these sorts of strategies to outthink life are importations of the past. And along with it, you can't just bring, you can't dip into a bucket of water and bring a drop.
Yes.
So that is a critical awareness to have, a critical tool to have. What makes it challenging is that in the absence of a developmentally appropriate relationship with absolutes, insurances, and guarantees, in the absence of that, we are left with something brand new, and that is the maturing of uncertainty. So while we can have vision about the future...
Excuse me, but by maturing, I'm hearing you say we need to appreciate that uncertainty is a positive phenomenon.
Uncertainty is the field of possibility itself.
Exactly.
And absolutes and guarantees are
they're wishful projections.
They're control.
They're
controlling.
They're an attempt to control.
Would that they were as benign as wishful.
That's right. Very good. They're fundamentally
toxic.
Structures of control.
They're toxic and they're dangerous.
Yes.
There comes a point when they're dangerous.
Yes.
So the seasoning is to develop a relationship. It's fledgling. So with uncertainty, that is the higher ground, and this is new. This is very new, and it constantly triggers ever more thought stream, and it becomes a loop. Unfortunately, the loop switches from being constrictive to being expansive. At some point, you realize this is my thought stream, none of which has anything to do with the present.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me throw one more thought on you, and then
one more. We're just getting warmed up.
I know
here.
We're just getting warmed up. This idea has to do with changing the nature of how we are constituted in relationship to ourselves and each other. So, for example, I think in the traditional world we've lived in, fundamentally home plate is the individual. And while we'll all acknowledge the importance of relationship, and we can have various, ideas and intellectual constructs of a bigger interpretation of who we are, that one of the fundamental insights that I've been working with is that came from your book about paradox. And it's the paradoxes that can often open up really new futures. And one paradox that I've been chewing on is that only the individual can make a commitment. It's only possible for an individual. We can't commit. You can commit, I can commit, and we can align. But I can only make a commitment for me. Now,
I think I would language that in this way. Only I can make a conscious commitment. And if I don't make a conscious commitment, others will commit me. And
Well-
I will draft in behind others' commitments
Fair
for
enough.
me.
Fair enough. But so if we start with only you can commit,
Yeah.
I then say the paradox is, but you cannot fulfill any of your commitments by yourself.
Absolutely not.
So we have this phenomenon emerging in this unpredictable world of being able to create the world, but to do it, we need to be able to resolve the paradox of the individual and the community, or the individual or the group.
It's so beautifully articulated. We will not be able to resolve the paradox because the nature of paradox is absolutes and guarantees. Our antipathy to paradox arises out of our awkwardness, our discomfort for anything but absolutes and guarantees, and it is not the nature of the our evolving consciousness. It is not in the nature of evolving consciousness that absolutes and guarantees exist. It is in the nature of evolving consciousness that paradox is I'm not going to go as far as saying it's the bedrock, but it is certainly a hallmark quality of what is emerging.
I think you're exactly right. Well, I really appreciate the time, Barnet, and I want to just leave an opening for a future conversation.
Many, I hope.
Because I know that at the end of the day, for people that are watching this as well as you and I, whatever the future will be a function of us and the conversations and the commitments.
And largely personal choice.
And the choices that we make. Because without choice, we're simply left to predefined decisions that are based on our logic from the past.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you very much.
It's such a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.